What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Midwest Motoring Podcast Season 2. We're back. I didn't forget about you guys. A lot of things have happened. And, we're back. And I can't wait to really dive into a lot of cool things this year. It's 2021. It's been a very busy year for a lot of people. Things are picking back up for sure. One of the biggest things I wanted to do is introduce a new co-host with us. Jess Meyer from Hagerty is joining us today, and we're going to go over a little bit about what he does for Hagerty, who he is, and some of the past things that he's done for the Columbus car market, which is actually a really cool story. So I can't wait to dig into that. We're going to talk a little bit about Pebble Beach. We're going to talk a little bit about some cool cars, and just hang out for episode 30. Well, I guess this will be episode 1 of season 2. We're going to start back from the beginning. Jess, tell everybody a little bit about you, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. A little bit about me. I currently work as an automotive enthusiast advisor for Hagerty, which what that boils down to is I am inbound taking calls, helping members out with all of their quotes, making changes to their policies, any questions they have about insurance, our product. So I really have a good understanding of all of Hagerty's product offerings.
You are the kind of the front lines of Hagerty, really taking in a lot of the calls, the questions, doing a lot of the sales and service. It's a really awesome job. But what do you think of Hagerty so far?
I've loved my time at Hagerty. I'm automotive enthusiast, so always have heard of the company, knew of the company, seen them around, and that's kind of what drew me to Hagerty. They're not only an insurance company, and that's really cool to me. They actually are passionate and involved in the hobby, which it lines up with me and kind of my experience. So 100%. It's a super great place.
You started doing car stuff a long time ago, and it didn't just start with Hagerty. So let's kind of start from the beginning. When did you really start loving cars?
Yeah, so I like to tell people there's not really a moment I can point to when I'm like, oh, I started liking cars here. It kind of always was a thing. I mean, even as far back as preschool, I was already collecting Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars, and they just always drew my attention. I like to tell people I started getting my DuPont registry subscription when I was in 3rd grade. I thought high-end exotic cars were really cool, and in 3rd grade, I decided to get DuPont registry.
DuPont registry. Jeez. Those magazines do have quite the collection for sure. All high-end, all very eclectic, and it's a completely different buying experience and sales experience to a lot of like normal, what people think is normal car sales, At least not outside our circles of car people and, exotics and things like that.
Absolutely. DuPont registry, it's basically consignment and a buy-sell for private sellers, for dealerships, but it all revolves around those kind of exotic and wild cars. And I always thought it was fun to just look through and see what was on the market. And I will tell you, I'm not very mechanical. I wish I was more mechanical, but I've always been kind of fixated on specs, and I can tell you every model. I know all that stuff. That's when cool. It comes to cars, so it's pretty fun.
So you started there. Obviously, you got your DuPont registries, and then you also did a lot with social media too.
Yeah, so in high school, I always was on social media just kind of for myself. Got pretty addicted to Instagram when it came out. I thought it was a really cool concept. I'm a very visual person, so seeing pictures was always like really cool. When I was a senior in high school, I was already taking photos of cars myself. I had an iPhone, and it was pretty accessible to start taking photos for myself. So I found this page called Columbus Exotics, and they had 100, 200 followers at that point.
Right.
They were just highlighting exotic cars in the Columbus area. People would send them photos, but they didn't really have much content. It was a newer page. Nobody really knew about it. So I went and tagged and sent them. This was before direct messages, so you just had to tag their page on your pictures that you posted.
Interesting.
And they would basically screenshot the photo and repost it if they liked it.
I feel a bit boomerish because I wasn't in Instagram at that time.
Yeah, so it's funny. The early Instagram, there was a lot of features that didn't exist, and it was funny because they realized how passionate I was about exotic cars and the cars in general.
Right.
So I started going to shows on my own. I started doing stuff, sending them photos, and they were like, hey, we're college students. We don't have much time anymore.
Right.
Would you have any interest in wanting to help out with the page?
Okay.
And I was about to go into my freshman year of college. I was like, sure, be around more exotic cars. Absolutely.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, it's a new hobby. Why not? And I really enjoyed that. And then we invited one more person. His name's Austin. Shortly after, and he was kind of didn't know as much about cars, but was a great photographer.
Okay.
So we started going to shows and doing some of our own content mixed in with, like some of our follower submissions. And at that point, it was very much, I was logged into Columbus Exotics at all times.
Okay.
You couldn't switch between accounts very easily. You just had to log in and log out manually. And so it was just easier. If we were going to post, we'd post in most days 3 to 5 times. We got to the point where we had enough followers that we were really getting a large supply of photos that we could choose kind of the best from. And it was really fun. A lot of people really liked seeing what Columbus had to offer. People didn't realize Columbus had so many high-end cars and awesome cars. And from that, we kind of got to know, I think he was a former guest of your guys, Paul Milligan.
Oh, yeah.
He kind of has one of the Columbus Cars and Coffee here in town, and he would invite us to events, and we kind of got to know some of the people in the scene, and really had a fun time.
There's a lot of cool people at both Cars and Coffee here in Columbus. We're blessed and cursed to have both, but there's a ton of great car people, and Paul is definitely one of them. He's done a lot for the car culture.
Absolutely, and it was just a blast getting to know people and doing the activities and just being around the cars, even though we didn't really have the car ourselves. We kind of had an in, which was kind of fun. Lots of just really cool events that were kind of invite-only type stuff. And really, we weren't trying to profit off Columbus Exotics. It was more of just hey, this is fun for us. We get to do cool car stuff. We get to network with people. And from there, it just kind of took off to the point of, we eclipsed 10,000 followers, and then we eventually got over 25,000 followers on Instagram.
Really?
Yeah, and it was in large part due to just we were very active on the page, replying to everybody that sent us pictures. This at that point was we were getting direct messages a lot. Just engaging and being very open with people, being able to talk to people. They really enjoyed that. It was just a couple guys that like to go and see cars. And, it's one of those things where no matter how many times you see some crazy cars, if you're a real car enthusiast, you're never going to grow tired of seeing a cool car.
Right.
And I think they realized that. And it was like we would plan shows and events and different things, and we'd have a lot of our followers come out for those. We would plan an event in 3 days, and we'd have 30, 40 cars and 300-400 people show up. And it was just really cool seeing that the power of social media is very crazy. Some of my good friends to this day I met through Columbus Exotics and hadn't met probably for the first 6 months in person. And then you go to a show and you meet them, and it's like you've been friends forever.
It's crazy that, and you go out to a lot of the shows as, just Jess. But you're kind of starting to go a little bit more and more for like Haggerty and whatnot. But people will stop you and go, "Oh, hey, Jess." It's crazy to see how many people from the car culture around here know you.
Yeah, so we really kind of broke in as Columbus Exotics. But a lot of that was us just kind of going out, almost cold selling ourselves as, hey, we run this Instagram page, and a lot of the people didn't really know what that was at first. And
right.
We're showing them our page, being like, hey, this is what we do. We just like cars. We like showing people cars. And I think a lot of people really appreciated that. And then it became more of not you guys are the Columbus Exotics guys. You guys are Austin. You guys are Jess.
Right.
You're Austin.
Right.
You're Jess. You're Colin. And it became just friends, and nobody that's a real car enthusiast in that community is like, oh, you don't have a cool car. They know we're passionate about
Right.
it, and that's really what it boils down to.
I think that's the nice thing about, to digress a little bit about cars and coffee, or cars and caffeine, or tea and tri-powers, like whatever it is. I think the reason that a lot of people are turning from the traditional car show to more of that style is the ease of access to everyone, the openness, the community. It's just easy going. People are chilling out, hanging out, having a great time. Where on a standard car show, there's a registration fee, there's registration, there's everyone wants their trophy, and if you don't get a trophy, there's complaints. Not saying that there's things wrong with those shows, but I think a lot of either first timers or people who maybe are a little less into the cars that they own, but like cars, are having a way better time over at a Cars and Coffee.
Well, I think the other thing is it's so accessible for people. Like you're saying, you could come with your Civic. You can come with, if you're passionate about cars, it doesn't really matter what you drive, coming as a spectator. As long as you show interest in cars, nobody that's a real enthusiast at these shows is going to fault you for being there.
Right.
And there's not any real gatekeeping. I know that term, but it really, in some car shows and some car circles, there's a lot of gatekeeping where it's, hey, you don't have this model car, you really don't belong here.
You park in that other lot down the way.
Yeah, and you see people at these more open Cars and Coffee formats, they might come with the most expensive car there, but they're checking out someone's build because that person's passionate about it, and they took the time and effort to do all this cool stuff to their car that might not traditionally be a very cool car or a very expensive car.
And I love seeing that because I quickly learned in my adult life is that I have to be passionate about people's passion and not passionate directly. Like, I have my own interests, but I can't belittle somebody else's passion, right? You got to say, okay, like we have a couple coworkers here that have really awesome vans. I never thought of myself as like a van person, but one of our coworkers has a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles themed van, right? And that's just really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many facets to the vehicle hobby. I don't know much about motorcycles. I appreciate them. I can be like, hey, that's a cool looking motorcycle. Right. I don't know as much about them as I do cars, but I can really appreciate someone that's passionate about that. Same sort of thing with the vintage campers that Hagerty's starting to do now.
Right.
We see these subcultures as like really community focused, and it's super cool.
I take back everything I said. Vintage camper people are weird. I'm kidding. But you're absolutely right, and I think that's the way the car culture is going. Which I remember thinking that shows like Pebble Beach are so hoity-toity. There's so much like pomp and circumstance around those. I would never be able to see some really cool cars, and that's not that's not the case for Pebble Beach, and that's not really the case for any car shows anymore, especially Cars and Coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It's become so much more accessible. And the thing that I love about these shows is for people that are younger, that don't even have an option to drive yet. I know Hagerty, we're all about preserving this hobby for so many younger kids. A lot of kids that get involved in this hobby have that moment where it's someone let them sit in their exotic car, or here's this experience that I can point back to and be like, yeah, that really started my interest in cars. I'm kind of the exception there where I just always liked them, but I still remember these moments of seeing cars like a Lamborghini at the gas station and the owner letting me sit in it and kind of check it out. And you remember these things for the rest of your life. So these really accessible shows are a great opportunity for the next generation of car enthusiasts to really get involved and kind of foster that passion for the hobby.
So beyond just the local scene, you've also done a lot nationally as well, right?
Yeah, so I've kind of been to a lot of different shows around the country. The biggest of which was attending Car Week.
Out there in Monterey.
Yeah, it was a blast. We had a friend of ours who wanted us to run some social media for an event called the Italian Stampede.
Okay.
Now it's called the iStampede because it's not only Italian cars anymore. They're a little bit more open, but pretty much all high-end exotic cars. I think the lowest-end car on our cruise was maybe an Audi RS7. So
okay. For the listeners out there, describe what the Italian Stampede or the iStampede is. Like, what do people do there?
Yeah, so the iStampede, what we did is we met in Monterey, or we actually met in Malibu.
Okay.
So right outside the LA area. It was about 100 exotic cars, all meeting at a dealership. It's sponsored by a bunch of different car companies, dealerships, Protective Film Solutions, bunch of different companies all kind of pitch in to help throw this event. And what we did is we went halfway on the highway, like the normal kind of the big interstate. And
up like the one up the coast?
Yeah. No. So the first part, I think we were on the 101.
Okay.
Which is kind of the more open, just big highway.
Right. But then made your way over to the Pacific Coast Highway?
Exactly. So we had lunch, and there was kind of an option of how to get there from there.
Okay.
There was about probably 30 of us that went Highway 1. Most people do it every year, go Pacific Coast Highway right up the coast. But the problem was there were actually a lot of fires that year. This was in 2016.
Okay.
And there was a lot of people that were nervous that with a 2-lane road, we might get stuck and not be able to get to Monterey. We kind of took a chance. There were some of the people that had never done the iStampede before. So we were like, hey, we're going to risk it. We're going to go ahead. We're going to try doing Highway 1. And I'm very glad we did. We were cruising up the coast. I was in a Rolls-Royce Wraith that was custom tuned and wide-bodied by a company called Novatech.
Okay.
It was a really awesome car, inspired by Music Edition, has copper in it, just really wild car. And in front of me would be a Ferrari F12 TDF, super limited edition car, worth probably close to $1 million now. McLaren P1, a Pagani Huayra, all these crazy cars, and we're just cruising up the coast all together in one straight line. You never really forget pulling into a gas station with a kind of big group of exotic cars like that, because you have the people that just happen to be at that gas station. They see $10-15 million of cars pull in, and even if you're not a car person, it's exciting. And that was an awesome trip. So we got to Monterey. We all stay at the same hotel. So you go in this parking garage at the hotel, and there's $100+ million worth of cars.
Okay.
And I mean, it's Car Week totally, when you get there, is just insane. It's a tiny little town of Monterey, and everywhere you look is just high-end cars. They're street parked.
They're parked by trucks, and
you'd never see anything like it. It's wild. You go into the little neighboring town of Carmel. It's just a little seaside town with shops and restaurants, and you'll see a car that you probably will never see again in your life, just street parked, parallel parked on the road. And it really starts spoiling you for what types of cars impress you for a bit.
Right.
You get a little calloused to things because
it's just kind of wears on you.
Well, you come back. I came back to Columbus, which has a great car scene, but for about a month, you're like, man,
there's nothing that impresses me.
There's nothing I've seen or I haven't seen here. And that was what was so cool about Car Week is even if you don't pay for any of the shows, there's so much free car activity going on that you're in heaven as a car enthusiast. So while we were there, we went to Concorso Italiano, which was only Italian cars. I met Horatio Pagani there.
Oh, that's really cool.
Bunch of just different content creators, YouTubers, a lot of people there. Rob Dom, famous for his RX-7. Lots of really cool people that some of them were on the iStampede, some weren't. But just going to that show, there was one called I think they've since changed the name. I don't remember what it is now, but it was called Exotics on Cannery Row. It was a free one. Just unbelievable amounts of what they call hypercars, which are just,
You're talking
seven
Chirons,
figure, seven figure
Huayras,
Koenigsegg, Pagani, Bugatti, stuff like the LaFerrari, the Porsche 918, just crazy 7-figure cars everywhere at this show, and lots of spectators. That's the one that a lot of people go to because it's free, and so there's just a ton of crowd that you're kind of wading through to see these cars. And we kind of capped off the week with going to Pebble Beach, the Pebble Beach Concours. There's a couple other shows we contemplated going to, but we were like, hey, we're at Car Week. This is our first time. I think we have to go to Pebble Beach. And at that time, I didn't have as much appreciation as I do now for that old of vehicles.
Oh, yeah. Like the pre-war stuff?
Pre-war stuff that I'd never seen and I never will see again. But stuff that you're just like, when you're there for the first time, you're impressed by it. But once you start looking at the book after you leave with the information about the history of each vehicle, you're like, wow, it's unbelievable I saw that car.
Right.
One of the features of 2016 was actually the 50th anniversary of the Ford GT40 win.
Oh, that's right. You were telling me
win.
about this.
And
that's insane, too.
This is what the movie Ford vs. Ferrari was all based on.
Right.
And I didn't even realize it. I was watching Ford vs. Ferrari. I was like, those look so familiar. I looked back at my pictures from Car Week, and sure enough, the first 3 GT40s that were on display were those 3 exact vehicles.
Right, 1, 2, and 3.
The 1, 2, 3 car, plus another maybe 15 GT40s that were all Le Mans
Did they have any
competing.
of the new ones?
So at that point, the new Ford GT was only in prototype phases.
Okay.
They had one on the concept lawn, and it wasn't even released at that point. So I did see one, but it wasn't in that same area. That was only Le Mans competing GT40s. They were very, very particular about what they let in.
Okay.
Saw other stuff that was just stuff I'll never see again in my life, but super cool show. I didn't really know all the history of the Pebble Beach Concours, but I showed up, and the people that bring their cars actually dress in period attire to the car they bring, which I didn't know. And I saw people wearing top hats and stuff, and I'm like, well, this is strange. And I maybe should have done a little bit of research before heading in.
But even if you didn't, it is a jacket tie affair, but that's not to say that it's any more or less welcoming to people. Yes, there's a heavy price tag, but I do think that it's kind of a pilgrimage that a lot of car enthusiasts need to make, right? At least once or twice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Car Week in general is just kind of the pinnacle car event. If you're an enthusiast of high-end cars in any capacity, going to Car Week once, making the effort, trying to do as much as you can while you're there. The great thing is I do know the Pebble Beach tickets do usually go and they benefit charity.
Right.
So it is a higher price tag, but I felt that since I'm going, I have to kind of do it right. You kind of have to do either that show or the Quail is another big one while you're there. And we kind of skipped out on the Quail to go to Pebble. They're very different shows, but you're exactly right. It's kind of the mecca of car events.
It's also one of the best events to go experience some of the things that Hagerty has to offer. This isn't a Hagerty-specific podcast, but, they do have a lot of great things. And one of the big Hagerty traditions is the Dawn Patrol. You got to go check them out. You get up bright and early, go to the golf course. I forget what green it's on, but, you get out there, you get coffee and donuts, and you get a hat. But it's just the most serene place to be surrounded by millions and millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars in cars, as well as one of the most gorgeous golf courses in the world.
Oh, absolutely. The thing about the Pebble Beach Concours is not only are these unbelievable cars, the setting is perfect. You're you're right on the fairway and on the green of Pebble Beach Golf Course. The lodge and the clubhouse is right behind you, and just the location is just perfect. It's right on the coast, right on the harbor. Like, you can see water, you can see cars, you can see the golf course. It's beautiful. And yeah, Haggerty, unfortunately, when I was there, I didn't really know about Dawn Patrol.
Okay.
And it's one of those things I really wish I would have known, and hopefully in the future I'll have an opportunity to do that. But all these vehicles have to get brought in. All these cars are driving cars. They are able to be driven.
There are certain aspects of Pebble that there's driving events that cars can participate in, and if they do so, they get like basically a point override if they go up against like another car. Say they both get 99 points. If the car that is tied took one of these drives, they actually get a point override to break any ties. So to be like, well, that guy drove his around the 70 mile loop that we have, so he gets a additional point in case it's needed to. It's not really a point, but it's like he gets the nod in case of a tie. But I was looking at Haggerty Media, and Andrew Newton off of HaggertyMedia.com, he put a list together for the 2021 Monterey Car Week, and he said 7 oddballs keeping it weird at Monterey this year. And some of these cars on here, I don't think I've ever heard of. For example, there's a 1954 Glocker Porsche 356 Carrera 1500 Coupe. That thing looks pretty crazy. It's actually up for auction, I believe, at RM Sotheby. It's lot 236. They're estimating the value to be anywhere between $750,000 to $1 million. That thing looks, it's full on race car. There's a 1910 AC Sociable. This thing it looks like a 3-wheeler. I mean, what do you think of that one?
Yeah, that's is it a motorcycle? Is it a car? I really don't know. It's like almost the precursor to the Champagne T-Rex in 1910. It's got 1 wheel in the back, 2 in the front. And
one of those Polaris slingshots?
Yeah, it's a very bizarre car. Never seen anything like it.
What do they estimate that one at?
Let's take a look here. This one estimate, it's RM Sotheby's as well, lot 304. Estimated between $30,000 and $40,000.
That's not too bad.
So
I mean, if you want a $30,000 oddity from 1910,
well, the thing is, it's an AC, so you can tell people, hey, this is the company that made the Cobra.
Yeah, hey, this led to not the Cobra, that was Carroll Shelby, but the AC, right?
Yeah, the AC Cobra, the kind of the recreations. Another big thing, I don't know if you saw, but Neil Peart, the legendary drummer from Rush, his whole collection is actually going to be on sale this year.
Interesting.
Mostly silver cars, but
what in the heck is this thing? And I implore our listeners, and I apologize that this is not a video podcast yet, but I implore you to go check these out, again, on Haggerty.com/media. This is a 1968 BMW Gloss 3000. Doesn't even look like a BMW.
That almost looks like an early Japanese car.
It is devoid of the kidney grill for sure. Meekum's estimating this between 100 and 110,000. It's got a V8 in it though.
Hey,
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that.
Here you go. These I've seen a couple of these and they're pretty crazy. This is a 1928 Bugatti Type 52. BB? Bebe? Baba?
BB?
It's French, so I don't know. It's definitely a Bugatti race car, valued at about 100 and 125,000. These aren't as heavy hitters as I thought they would be. Oh, here we go. This one definitely is. So the next one is a 1954 Dodge Fire Arrow 2 by Ghia. This thing looks pretty crazy. Talk about that.
Whoa, that is a wild car. I didn't know Dodge made anything looking like that.
Dodge never made anything look good. I'm kidding, Dodge. Don't hate me.
It almost looks like an old Ferrari.
Oh,
it has
the
big circle grille in the front, very similar to like the 250 Testarossa and a couple of those other cars. That is awesome.
I will say this, and I mean the utmost respect to the Ferrari owner from the Concours of America at Plymouth that we met. But Ventimiglia, I think it was, just a gorgeous Ferrari as one of the winners up there. And it does kind of have that wide open, rectangular grille. It doesn't have the egg crate grill inserts that the Ferraris had, but it definitely looks interesting. But they're saying this is going to go for anywhere between $900 and $1.2 million. So according to Andrew, the Fire Arrow 1 was just a static model. However, the Fire Arrows 2 through 4 were fully functioning cars. They were well received and showed promise. So one has to wonder if Chrysler could have conceivably built the Fire Arrow. So this is a concept car to compete with the Corvette and the Thunderbird. Interesting. This was a big one. 1930 Buccal. I can't even. You might be able to pronounce that. I know two C's make a
Bucciali.
Bucciali. A Bucciali TAV 30 La Marie. They don't even have an estimate on this car, but it's one of those big honking 1930s cars. Oh, wow. It's got like a swan in the engine, like the side of the engine, but that's pretty cool. Oh, this is an interesting one. This almost reminds me of one of the Jalpa Porsches.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a very interesting Porsche. It's got the slant nose, but the whole back end is completely different than any of the other Porsches.
I didn't know until very recently. I watched a YouTube video about some Porsches, and I did not know that even back then, Porsche had like a specialty line that basically, if you had a big enough pocketbook, you could have them make anything for you. Like,
really? So it wasn't just the off-the-shelf Porsches. They kind of had their...
A lot of the slant noses from Porsche were through a special program, apparently. I did not know that.
Interesting. I remember when I was there years ago, one of the coolest cars I saw was a slant nose. It was actually a Steve McQueen 935 slant nose race car. Super cool car. It was all red and yellow. I think it was a Hawaiian Tropic livery, which is pretty cool.
Hawaiian Tropic. Those were pretty cool liveries. I do just got to talk about this real quick. Road and Track has a video on their site of a Lambo test driver giving a spy photographer the middle finger.
Oh, no.
It's very Italian of them.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's kind of a necessary evil having to get the car out on the road. But, I guess I don't blame them for getting upset that their designs are being seen.
It looks like an STO is what it is. Like maybe an STO Roadster or like some kind of specialty STO.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe it's a race spec STO.
Well, it's on the road, so I imagine some kind of homologation option.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, it is always interesting to see those camouflage cars out in the wild.
I got to see a couple when I was out in Plymouth 2 weekends ago for the Concours of America. Definitely SUVs. A couple, I think, Broncos went by in camouflage, which if it's a Bronco in camouflage, I think the rumblings are maybe it's the Raptor variant. So
interesting. Yeah, that would be wild.
I did see a lot of Broncos up there. It's pretty cool. We actually got a picture of a old school Bronco 2 and a new Bronco, and it was a crazy day for sure out there.
Wow.
Speaking of cars and weird cars, I don't know if you'll have a weird car in your list, but we didn't even talk about you a little bit. Like, what is your current dream car?
Ooh, so I have always been someone that has really, really enjoyed practicality meets performance. So one of my dream cars is I would love to have an Audi RS6 Avant wagon.
Okay. Any particular year?
The current new generation that just came out. 580 horsepower wagon is just wild to me. But I also think it's such a cool idea because it's really one of those vehicles, if you know, you know.
Didn't they at one point in time in the RS6 Avant have a twin turbocharged V10?
It's definitely possible. This being the first one that's been introduced in the U.S.,
Right.
I don't know as much about the older specs.
Audi, I have a very big soft spot in my heart for Audi wagons. I think one of my dream cars is the RS3,
Cool.
co-produced with Porsche.
Yeah, absolutely. The little would you get the hatch, the RS3 hatch?
So it was an RS2, and it's basically a slightly smaller RS4 Avant.
Okay.
But at one point in time, Audi had Porsche help co-develop it, and so like a lot of the wheels, like it's got 996 wheels.
Interesting. So it's basically a rebranded Porsche in essence.
Kind of, yeah. A lot of the motor, it's still an Audi, but like Porsche is as much an engineering house as it is a car production. So they outsource their engineering team to anyone who's willing to pay for it. So that's pretty cool. What else? What would? Okay, so if that's your practical hypercar / sports car, what would be? Money is no object, but you only can get one.
So as far as a collector standpoint, my favorite type of car is I love the big engine V12 front engine Ferraris.
Okay. All right.
So a 599 GTO.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Is actually one of my favorite cars of all time.
I think the GTO of the 599s looked far better than the standard 599.
The 599 was not that attractive of a car.
No.
It kind of was ugly, in my opinion.
Comparatively to the 575 that came before it.
Exactly, and even the F12 that came after.
Right.
It looked a lot more sleek. The 599 was kind of bulbous in the front, and it kind of just didn't really make sense.
Very Scagaletti.
Exactly. Very, very similar to the 612. But for whatever reason, the GTO variant sounds incredible, looks incredible. They did all of the right aero that they needed to make it look good. It looks way more aggressive.
I love the black roof.
Oh, absolutely. The black roof option with all the carbon in the engine bay. I've seen a couple really cool specs where it's white with black roof.
I mean, they clearly performed well enough that Ferrari made, I forget the moniker, but it was a 599 race car that you could own. I think it was it
was the 599 XX
K or something like that.
Evo, I believe.
It sounds about right.
And it was a part of their Corsa Clienti program.
Isn't that crazy?
You buy a car, they hold on to it.
You can't touch it.
And they take it from track to track for you to use.
But only tracks that they're willing to take it to.
Exactly. And you also have to pay their engineers to be there to help you out with it.
That's so crazy. So it's not just the price of the car, but then you also got to afford getting people out there to work on the cars too.
Yeah, what an interesting program.
No, the FXK, wasn't that the
So the
Enzo?
FXX was the Enzo.
Mm-hmm.
The FXXK was the LaFerrari.
LaFerrari, okay.
And then the 599XX, I believe, was what they called it.
Oof. They definitely make some really cool cars. Ferrari does, but they've also made some bad ones too.
Yeah, there's been a couple duds here and there. You can't. I don't think you can win them all, but I'm trying to think of specific ones that I'm like, probably wouldn't choose that. I know one that a lot of people would say is probably the 308 or the 328.
Yeah.
Not very great quality-wise.
I know
a lot of people had issues with...
A lot of people like the Testarossa too, and for me, it doesn't look bad. it's not an ugly car.
It's very 80s.
Yeah, and I think for me, I like the Berlinetta, I think the 355 a little bit more than the Testarossa. So I'm kind of more 90s fan and up. I think the 80s Ferraris were a little bit too 80s. And not it's weird because they were too subtly 80s, I think is the problem. Because you could get a Countach, was a really cool 80s car, right? But I honestly think that there was better looking cars for sure in the 80s than the Testarossa.
Yeah, it comes across as, I guess, now collectible because
it's booming.
It is the very essence of 80s.
It's also really...
And Miami Vice also didn't hurt it.
No, it didn't hurt it at all. It's also, its motor is a horizontally opposed 12-cylinder.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
Right? And so you will never get a Boxer V12 or Boxer 12 again. I think it's horizontally opposed. I might be speaking lunacy, and some Ferrari fans going to be, it's not horizontally opposed. You don't know what you're talking about. Which is well documented. I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's funny. Yeah, Ferrari, I would pick a modern Ferrari over a modern Lamborghini, typically. Just me. There's other cars that are kind of out of the realm of possibility, like Pagani, that I really appreciate. Just the craftsmanship and the artistry behind them.
No, I was right. So the Testarossa has a naturally aspirated 4.9-liter, longitudinally mounted, 180-degree Ferrari flat 12. The engine had dual overhead cams and 4 valves per cylinder. So
interesting.
I did know what I was talking about. I'm not a Ferrari plebeian.
Look at you. You're not going to offend anyone with that statement.
With that statement, I won't. Yeah, no, be very specific. With that comment, I won't. But I'm more of a Porsche guy, too, especially early Porsches. So they didn't look anything flashy like the Ferraris did or the Lamborghinis of the time. Mm-hmm. Unless like you get some of the Gambala and crazy ones.
Yeah, you got the Jimbala. You have I'm trying to think of some of the other ones here.
So we just looked at that Ren list.
Ren Speed
or whatever. So Porsche themselves had some pretty crazy ones too. Well, Jess, I think, for episode 1 of season 2 of the Midwest Motoring Podcast, I really appreciate you jumping in. I think that's a really great spot for us to kind of end. Is there a place that people can follow you still?
Yeah, so we still have our page, Columbus Exotics. We're not as active as we used to be. It's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, it's on Twitter. Instagram's our most used platform. It's at Columbus_exotics.
Okay. And you're a streamer too, right?
Yeah, so I actually enjoy gaming on the side, play all kinds of different things. All of my personal social media is at JessMeyers5, and that's JessMeyers 5. I stream on Twitch, have an Instagram. I do all kinds of fun car, gaming, all sorts of different things.
He also was just out in our lobby of Hagerty using the race simulator, setting some lap times that I now need to go crush, even though I definitely didn't beforehand. So it was my first time on the simulator. Okay, I gotta get used to it. But Jess, thank you for joining us, and I can't wait to have you as part of the Midwest Motoring team. But this has been episode 1 of season 2 of the Midwest Motoring Podcast. I appreciate you guys sticking to the end. But just definitely check us out on Facebook still. We're still uploading to our YouTube channel as kind of a repository as well. But leave a like, leave a comment, and let us know what you think of the new setup. But this has been the Midwest Motoring Podcast. We'll see you guys on the next one.